Today, I'm talking with Jack Cotton of Sotheby's International Realty in Cape Cod. Jack is a former guest back on the show for a third interview. He was one of the first in episode 4 about breaking into the luxury market, and episode 2 about how to win listings in high or low inventory markets. Today, Jack and I talk about how to build standing with billionaire clients. Welcome to the Jere Metcalf Podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. I created this podcast because over the years that I've been an agent, from struggling to successful, I found that the one foundation that created the mindset, knowledge, and ability to break through to new levels was the camaraderie and sharing of ideas from other generous and successful agents. Those experiences catapulted my career. They gave me the inspiration and idea to further develop those friendships and share what they have had to share with me to make not only more successful careers for each of us, but a stronger community and better respect for our profession at large. All right, everybody, it's the Jere Metcalf Podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. And today we are thrilled to have Jack Cotton from Cape Cod with Sotheby's International Realty back on the show. Jack, great to see you.
So great to be here, Jere. Thank you for inviting me back. That's always a good sign when you get invited back.
Thank you for being on. Well, we keep talking about you and quoting you and referencing you. And then we've had Josh Tatoli, who is he's gone from doing really well to he doesn't even have the same vibe. I mean, he's like on a whole new plane. And every time I talked to him about what it was and how it was, it came right back to you. And I'm like, well, I already know he's great. We keep talking about Jack. Let's just bring him back on.
Here I am.
Here you are. So tell us a little bit about, we talked about this on the show before, but everybody go back and listen to other interviews with Jack. They're great. We talk about the listing presentation, breaking into the luxury industry. Today we're going to talk about agents changing their game and taking it to the next level and how he helps agents do that. But before we get into it, do give us a quick, everybody who's listening to you for the first time, kind of, or again, a quick review, reminder of your story, because it's kind of a fun one, and how you got in the business and got started.
Okay, well, this is actually May of 2019, which means this month is 45 years for me in the business, longer than you've even been alive. So I've been doing this for a really long time. And I started in my college dorm room. I knew so much, didn't have to work for another company first. And I used to make my own signs. And back in 1974, there was no desktop printing. There was no graphic things you had to buy, pieces of plywood and paint them, and then get sticky letters to stick them on. It was like the most pathetic thing you've ever seen in your life. It's actually embarrassing to think back. I wish I could have pictures of my old for sale signs. It really is.
Wow.
It was sad. And my office was in a plumbing supply warehouse. I couldn't afford a real office. I used to share a phone with my dad, who owned the plumbing supply warehouse. So when the phone rang in 1974, I didn't know if somebody was calling about a house or a toilet seat. So it was, it's a miracle how I look at it.
Really? And now here you are 45 years later. And so when you got into 45 years later, you've started your business, very successful in Cape Cod.
Wasn't successful at all when I started.
Well, right. Yeah. So that's where I was going, actually, because you're really successful now. So tell us a little bit more about, because you grew up in a family where your dad was a plumber. So you were supposed to, kind of give us the reminders on that. Yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't a plumber. He sold stuff to plumbers.
That was it. Okay.
He didn't even know what the stuff was for that he sold, but he wouldn't even know what a wrench was, but he would sell the stuff to plumbers, and he had a warehouse with all the toilets. So I had an empty desk at the back of the warehouse, with toilet seats and toilets and pipes all around me. And that was my first real estate office for the first year in my business. And, secretly, even though he gave me free rent, he wanted me to fail because his dream was for me to enter the plumbing supply business with him. So he would, grab the phone, and he was awful on the phone. It was really a bad first year, but
wow.
And I had this crappy car. I had this 1967 lime green Ford Maverick with a black racing stripe down the hood and a 3-speed standard shift, and it got rear-ended in April of 1974. And I got $600 of insurance money, and that was my money to start my business. And $600 went a lot further in 1974 than it does today, but it was still a sad, pathetic start to my real estate career.
Wow.
I just thought, you put an ad in the paper, you get a listing, and there was nothing in writing back then. We would take a listing, you wouldn't even get a contract. You would sell something, you wouldn't even do a contract. You were just like, 2 cars would pass and the windows would roll down, and we'd be like, oh, I've got this piece of land over here, you want to buy it? And somebody would go, yeah, I'll take it. Well, let's $10,000. Okay, well, let's close in 2 weeks. I'll see you at the registry in 2 weeks. Great, see you then. That was it. And no contracts, nothing. And
wow.
Today, the contracts we use today are not as ironclad as the handshakes were in 1974.
Wow.
It's a whole different world now. Everyone, everything's in writing now, but the whole change, I miss the old guard. I miss the people.
Yeah.
I built my business on older people, and just the integrity, the wisdom, the compass always pointing true north, or you like that compass phrase, always pointing true north. And their word was their bond.
Right.
You didn't need contracts back then, and we didn't start using them for a couple of years until,
wow.
I had the money to join MLS and stuff like that, and had to. But anyway, that's the short version.
Wow. So
yes.
tell us about. So, there's so many questions, but I want to make sure we get to what we were.
Sure.
Well, I don't know. We could talk about so many things, but so you came, and I think something else that's really interesting is when you talk about. And I know you talk about one of the things that you would recommend to people is you started on your own with your own company. Is that right?
Correct.
And
well, you know what? You could do it back then. I'm not sure I'd want to do that today, but you could do it.
Well, you recommend being on teams now and working with someone who can mentor you. And
yeah, I think you want to work for a company to have that support. And, things were different back then. And plus, I was so clueless and just just stupid and just didn't know any better.
Yeah.
I just... if I had worked, I wish I had gone to work for a company, because I think it would have, my learning curve would have been so much steeper than all the trial and error that I did,
But that's why you're so great at speaking today. You have such a great book because you learned everything the hard way. You've made more mistakes, right? I tease you because you've told me that before. So
I didn't even sell. It took me a year to sell my first house. It took me a year and a month and 3 weeks and 2 days and 4 hours to sell my first house. It was really, really, really sad.
Wow! But at least you had free rent in your dad's shop.
Yeah. So, and he was like I said, and he would constantly sabotage me, because he wanted me to fail. He wanted me to fill toilet seats with him.
Wow! So what do you think it was that despite all of the challenges that were presented before you, what do you think it was that you still were able to get where you are today?
I was born to be a realtor. It was not my career. It's not my job. It is my calling. And, even as a little kid, everybody can talk about their childhood and all the messed up stuff that happened in their childhood. And I'm no exception to that. I have a lot of stuff I could tell you about that, but I won't. But I will tell you this. Back when I was a little kid, Cape Cod was just being developed and they were building houses everywhere. So I had this endless supply of lumber. So I would just start building my own houses. I would build houses in the tops of trees. I would build my houses under trees. I would build my houses in the woods or in fields. And every time I was having a bad day and things weren't going well, which was often, I would retreat into my own little space up the tree or under the tree or wherever. And when I would get inside my crudely built little house, and the sunlight would filter in through the boards and light up the grain on the wood inside, and I would smell that smell of fresh cut wood. Everything became all right with my world, and I felt great again. I was in my space. And that's a feeling I've never gotten away from. And that's the feeling that I think everybody has when they come home. And, when I sold my company in 2005, in the wire, my account, the very first thing I bought for a fortune was a tree house that this famous treehouse builder in California built. Then I bought the tree to go with it. And then I rented an 18-wheeler and brought it across the country. And I set it up in the front yard of my house. It's still there right now. And so every time I go to work today, I go by this treehouse that I bought. And it's got like a hollowed out Keebler cookie elf door. People climb up inside the tree to get to the treehouse. And it just reminds me of why I am in this business. It's why I have this passion for this business. And it is my calling. I mean, helping people find their treehouse, their little oasis from the storms of life is what I do. And in my particular case, they tend to be second or third or fourth homes for people, but it's still where they retreat, where they reconnect with their families, where they, recharge from all the beatings they take and the thing called this earth. So that's my short story.
I love it. And that is kind of what the second homes to your clients are probably, what I'm hearing is that might be a little bit of what the treehouse was to you as a kid, or what tree houses are to all of us when we were kids.
Yeah.
So just a really fancy tree house in Cape Cod.
There's some expensive tree houses here. There's a guy building one here now for $100 million, if you can believe it. It's not a tree house, but a second home, like $100
million in Cape Cod. That's incredible. Yeah. That's an incredible market. So tell us, now today you're helping agent, you've been through what you've been through. You've written a book on luxury home marketing. You've written, how many books that you've written? About 3. Have you written a few?
4, but who's counting?
Right.
One's about dogs, and then the other 3 are about real estate. Do you have my dog book?
I do, actually. I do. I love it. No, it's a great.
So the other 3 are about real estate. And I'm working on one now on negotiation. So for luxury real estate people. So it's about 3/4 done.
Oh, I like it. We may have to dig into that a little bit. So tell us a little. Well, now I'm wanting to go into that direction too. So we're going to fit that in. So tell us, you work with agents, Josh being a great example, who you bring these agents in and you really, help them harness, break into, or tell us before I just start, what does the typical, I want to get a little bit about the agents you work with and also learn from you what you've learned and witnessed in helping these agents. But the agents you're working with, what do they typically look like? Like, what's the picture?
The funny thing is, first of all, I don't have time to coach that many people one-on-one. So I only have a very few select clients. And except for one of them, they're all really young, like Josh. So I think of them as my kids, actually. And I love them, love them, love them. It's so exhilarating to be on the phone, or we use Zoom sometimes as well. But here's the thing, Jere. Mm-hmm. I'm not a miracle worker. I can't, Josh is doing what he's doing is because Josh is really good. He has great skills. He has great insights, and he has great work ethic, and he takes action. And that's nothing to do with me. That's just, I help Josh find what he has within himself and tell him that you can go do that. You can go get your first $10 million listing, which you just did a couple of weeks ago. So
good for him. Go Josh.
I would like to take the credit for all his success, but it's really because of Josh.
Well, he gives it all to you, so.
Well, but anyway, he's being very modest, and you have to have it within yourself, and you have to take the action. My job as a coach is to help you discover what is within yourself so that you can achieve that next level of business that you want to achieve. Or you can break into luxury real estate if that's what you want to do. Most people sit on the sidelines of the luxury real estate business thinking that they had to be born rich or well-connected to succeed here. And if you could pull that off, if you could have been born rich or well-connected or be a scratch golfer, you don't need me or my coaching or my books or anything. You can just go do it. But if you were born like poor with me, like me, or with a single mom and 2 sisters, and then you want to go into luxury real estate, being rich and well-connected is just not a possibility for you. And if you were a caddy, not a golfer, I was a caddy and never played golf, I was a caddy. That really wasn't that helpful either. So I have a different plan. I can teach you how to work your way into becoming a luxury real estate expert in your market and being perceived as an expert so that people want to work with you as they list and sell and buy luxury real estate in your market. Because I just know the hard work way to do it. I don't know the born rich or well-connected way to do it.
So that leads me to 2 questions. You said, I can't do it. I can't make it happen for people. I can't give it to them, but I can help them see it in themselves.
Yeah.
How do you think they see it? How do they finally see it in themselves? What's the difference between when they do and they don't?
Well, again, a lot of people just can't imagine talking to millionaires and billionaires. They can't imagine. I mean, the very thought of going on a listing presentation, on their first listing presentation for $1 million property, is just daunting to them to the point that they don't do it. And so my job is to help them prepare for that, so they have the confidence to go into that situation and know that they can do it, to the point of actually practicing it with me before they go on that appointment. And I give my coaching clients, they have like that show, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? You could make those, what do they call those calls you can make? A lifeline call.
Oh, lifeline call, yeah.
Yes, and sometimes they'll call me for like 10 minutes before they're going into an appointment. Help me, what am I going to say? What, and calm them down,
like,
breathe.
Reframe my.
And I love it. I love it because their success is my success, and I love sharing in their success. I've been doing this for a long time, as I mentioned, and the phase for me now is giving back to people, and giving back to the industry, and it keeps me on the cutting edge, and it makes me feel good. And as everything's changing and more technology, teaching and sharing and helping and making a difference in other agents' lives is really thrilling for me.
That's incredible. So I love to hear that. So I love it. It's like everybody always thinks there's a secret. What's the secret? Practice, hard work, knowledge. But go ahead.
Yeah, the secret is that you just have to work hard and work smart and work in the right direction and have the mindset that will allow you to sit down with a $10 million seller and be ready for when that seller asks you, well, how many $10 million homes have you listed? When you know the answer is 0, how do you convey the fact that you've never sold one, but it's an advantage to them to hire you to be there first? And that's what Josh did.
So tell us a little bit about that, because that's actually leading into my question, but in a different way.
Well, I mean, that's the question I get asked most often. How do I get my first one? Because people say, well, how many homes have you listed here? How many homes have you listed in this price point? And typically the answer is 0. And I was doing a listing presentation a couple of weeks ago for, I'll just say north of 50 million for a house. And I'm in a market that I don't really work in. And they asked me those same questions. Well, and the answer was 0. I've never sold a house over here before. And so how do you just convey that as an advantage? You can't hide from it. I've heard people say, well, change the subject, distract them, get them on a different track so they'll forget to ask the question.
Right.
And you know what I've noticed I've noticed this fundamental truth over 45 years, and that is that rich people tend not to be stupid. And rich people tend not to be easily snowed or BS'd. They have great BS detectors, as a matter of fact. You need to be truthful, have integrity, and again, use that compass word again. Your compass has to be pointing true north all the time, or they will see through you.
Great. I love that analogy. Yeah.
So I tell them that, listen, no, I've never listed a $10 million house before, if that's the case, and yours will be the first, and here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm not going to list one more $10 million house until we have an accepted offer on your house. I'm going to make the sale of your home the focus of my whole business. In fact, I'm going to make my mark on the listing and sale of your property. It's going to be the last thing I think about every night before I go to sleep, and the first thing I think about every morning when I wake up. I am going to be privileged to have your listing to the point where you won't be wait to refer me to your friends and associates when they want to list their expensive properties as well. Let me ask you this, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. How does it feel to have somebody this driven, this motivated, this just so keen on getting your property listed and sold? You see, you know this from your own business, that a lot of people in the high end, the higher you go in price range, agents tend to be entitled.
We quote you on that all the time on this show, by the way. But go ahead, yeah.
Totally. My people are privileged to be on this listing presentation.
Yeah.
So, and what I told, and I don't want to talk too much about any people, but the person we're talking about, the thing I told him was that if you do this, 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 and this, which is basically within you, you're not faking anything. This is who you are. But I'm going to tell you what's going to happen, and it did happen. That seller, 10 or 12, I forgot the price, $10 or $12 million seller, that seller is going to see a little bit of him in you, and you're going to get that listing. And that's exactly what happened.
Well, you talked about when you broke into the luxury industry because you had a single mom, you ended up, I don't know, there was a track record of, I don't remember how you got the first one, but there were women who were widowed
widows,
yes,
yeah.
and you really had a level of empathy in their needs and working with them that nobody else did. Now, you can't just have empathy and be nice to people and do really well in business. You got to have a little more to it than that. But that was the thing.
But tell you what, that goes a long way, though.
Right.
In treating people honestly and fairly and having integrity goes a long, long way also. Because if you don't have that, the rest doesn't matter.
Well, and it reminds me of, I have to bring up Matt Breitenbach in the Hamptons. He talks about keep it simple, keep it honest. That's right. It. Keep it simple. He got a lot of billionaire millennials actually, and a lot of NBA and celebrities. It's like, just keep it simple, keep it honest. That's it.
They feel through it. That's how they got to be where they are. They have great detectors. Exactly,
and and you're dealing with people who, if you call them 33 times a year, they don't. That's not valuable to them. It's your ability to listen, understand, keep it simple. Keep it honest and bring value, which going into bringing value, the other thing you had said was, you help agents understand and you learned the hard way how to be perceived as luxury.
An expert, a luxury expert.
Yes, I'm sorry, that's what I meant. I'm reading my notes and I didn't write out expert. But how to be perceived as a luxury expert. Correct. I want to hear, actually, tell us that, but I really want to hear how you figured it out and some stories you had to get there. So you answer which side of the question you want to first on that.
Well, first of all, I wish I could stand here and tell you that was a carefully crafted and designed and executed plan, but it was 100% accident. And when I started, I was 21, and I looked like I was 15. And I'm competing with people who look like I do now, with gray hair and wrinkles and track records. How do I compete with them? And so I had to have more perceived expertise. So I'm thinking, what do people really want expertise in? And I thought, well, it must be pricing, because everyone just walks into a house like you see a millionaire listing or whatever it's called, and they walk in the house looking like this. I mean, they have no pen, they have no pad in their hands. They look around the house, they go like $5 million. And right. That's how it was done back then. I thought, I need to do this a different way because I need to really work harder and convey my expertise. So I took a lot of appraisal classes. And, there was no such thing as a CMA. I've probably mentioned this before. I'm really old. But even though I'm old, we had the alphabet. We had all 26 letters, A through Z. We even had CM and A, but no one had ever put them together into a CMA. And so nobody did, just people walked in and shot a number off the top of their head. So I decided to start doing narrative appraisals, because we didn't have the word CMA yet. So I would just do a valuation letter that were 45 pages long, and understand also, we had typewriters back then. We didn't have word processors, so I'd have to type the whole stupid thing. And but I outworked everyone else, and I documented, and I had a process for valuation property to really give people a real number that they could hold in their hands and understand how it was arrived at, which no one else did in those days, unless you got an appraisal, which was very rare, because anybody could be an appraiser back then. There was no licensing or certification required. So,
oh wow!
So once I started doing that for people who needed them for tax planning purposes and also for property tax reduction purposes. And once I got my first luxury listing from a wonderful lady, and I did all her husband who had passed away, he was a big time lawyer, and the whole law firm saying, "Are you nuts? Look at this kid. You can't list. Are you crazy?
That's why she did it. Yeah.
Look at his hair. He doesn't even cut his hair." And so anyway, but she was tired of being told what to do all the time by men, and she followed her gut and she hired me, and the rest is history. We just went from there.
That's awesome. When you handle the opportunity, you can be given opportunities, but you've got to deliver on them. And obviously you did, right, and learned a lot from it. I love that story because I think about that a lot. You've said before, as agents get more experience, they become entitled. And not as a judgment, it's just human nature. They get used to it. They're getting listings.
Totally human nature.
Right. And then that was mine. That's the first listing, really famous luxury listing I picked up was he had actually been through 3 agents, and everybody, and then it had been off the market, and every big agent knew about it, knew him, and wanted it. And I was the kid who was like, I learned everything I could about the property. I knew things about the property nobody else knew. I approached it as a professional. I had the knowledge about the market. He couldn't believe what I knew about the market to be so young. He's like, how do you know all this? Like, and I just remember it was like, you know what? He was sick and tired of mainstream. He didn't like the whole scene, and he liked that somebody was coming in aggressive and fresh, and bam, I got it, sold it, put me on the map. Yeah.
Audacious. Yeah, that's the word. Audacious.
Audacious.
Fresh,
yes.
Fresh and audacious. And they're willing to take a chance on you because that person saw a little bit of him in you.
Exactly.
He harkened back to the day they were starting out and how much they hustled and how much they outworked everyone else. And they saw that spark in you and they took a chance on you. And that's how you got to where you are.
That's
as well.
what that's what they wanted.
And that's how I help my students or coachees, whatever you want to call them, I can't help people see a spark that isn't there, but I can help you develop your spark so people are more likely to see it because you're so close to it, you don't see it. So I help people find that.
Beautifully said. All right, this negotiating. I've heard you're negotiating about, I've heard you speak on it. I've spoken to you about it a little bit, but I really, really I love what you have to say because you really break it down and break down the personality so it becomes clear and everything makes a lot more sense when you're dealing with these agents who can be intimidating, especially in the luxury real estate industry. And then as you do it more and more, you just then it just gets really fun because you know what you're in for. But tell us a little bit break that down for us on negotiating and what makes a great negotiator in luxury real estate or in real estate and how do you do it?
Well, I'm obsessed with it because of my background, my upbringing. And even today, after 45 years, I still feel outgunned by my clients. When you sell a $5 million or $10 million house on my market, that's a big deal. But the people you're dealing with are doing transactions in their business in the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. And so they have way more experience than I'll ever have. So how do I equalize the playing field? So I really thought about it long and hard. I took a lot of classes, did a lot of study. I studied with a guy who wrote the book Getting to Yes, who I think is fabulous. He's passed away now, but he negotiated the nuclear arms treaty that we still live under with the Soviet Union. And he taught at Harvard. I spent a week with him at Harvard, negotiating with him one-on-one in front of a class of 200 lawyers from around the world. And I learned a ton. And plus I deal with really rich people here. And sometimes we have a billionaire on one side of the transaction, and sometimes we have them on both sides of the transaction. So studying all those decades of experience and interactions I've had, I've come up with 3 rules for negotiation that guide me and help me be a better negotiator, and I teach these to other people. The number 1 is to build standing. And by the way, 2 quick points. The best negotiation is no negotiation. So the better your presentation, for example, the less you're going to have to negotiate on price and commission. As 2 prime examples. The better your presentation, the less you have to negotiate. If you don't want to be eaten, stay away from the table. When you're dealing with really rich people, you don't want to be chewed up. Stay away from the table as long as possible. So the stronger your presentation, the greater your standing, the less you will have to negotiate. What is standing? It's your perception of preeminence in the marketplace. You can have it by, I'm in a resort market. I still wear a jacket and tie that helps build my standing. My experience, my decades in the business gives me a certain amount of standing. At the same time, real estate is very much a what have you done for me lately business. So that only takes me so far. The best standing you can have is from knowing about your, I hate to use the word adversary, but knowing as much as you can about the other side and building allies that can help you get that information and be on your side. But having lots of market knowledge, market data, and really understanding the wants, needs, and desires of the person on the other side. That's how you build standing. Number 2 is never assume. When I negotiated with Dr. Fisher, who wrote the book Getting to Yes, we would begin every morning at this Harvard negotiation class where he and I would negotiate over him giving me a signed a first edition copy of his book. And, once again, I made a complete utter abject fool out of myself in front of 200 lawyers from around the world at Harvard Law School. And but there's something about making a fool of yourself that really drives home the learning. And that's where I really learned, don't assume that the other person wants what you would want in the same situation. You really need to find out, what do they really want and why is that important to them? You know,
Exactly.
in high-end real estate, the goal for some sellers is not always to get the highest price. We've had sellers who happily, in a multiple offer situation, will take $1 million less from one buyer who's not going to tear their house down.
Mm-hmm.
So you really need to understand, what do they want and why do they want it? And don't just assume you do. And I can guarantee you, they don't think the way you do, and they don't have the same values you do. So you cannot assume you know what they want, because you just don't.
Well, and I love what you said. Well, finish what you're saying though. About.
It's okay. What was your
So
point?
what you said reminded me. I actually have a client who negotiates a lot for a living, and it's exactly what you said. But he said to me, he said, you know, people have a position and they have an interest. And the position is, like you said, I want to sell my house for this price. Right. But if that's all you know, but what is their interest?
This is positional negotiation.
Right, exactly.
Positional negotiation is banging your head against the other person's head. You get nowhere. And there's a lot of positional negotiating in real estate. People are stuck on their price for some reason. People are stuck on a commission.
Nobody's exploring that. What is their interest?
You need to get to their interest. And you can't assume what they are. So what you're saying is that you need to find out what their interests are, but many agents shortcut and they figure, well, if I was in his shoes, my interest would be this.
And I think it's a self-awareness issue too, because I find often, because I'm guilty of it. Right, that's how I know. But
this is all the Reader's Digest Cliff Notes version, but the third rule is detach from the outcome. And that's my rule for life, actually, detach from the outcome. And this is where I shine. I am so good at this. And as the older I get, I keep forgetting what the outcome is, so it's even easier to as soon as they see, ATM on your forehead, or you see ATM on their forehead, they're going to back off. Wealthy people are like a horse who can detect a nervous rider. So you need to you need to let them know that you're willing to walk away. You're willing to walk away, detach from the outcome. And that is by far the most important and the strongest of the three rules, especially as you move higher in net worth and you're dealing with more wealthy people. Well, your ability, your willingness to walk away. For example, when I'm presenting an offer, if I have an offer that's below, asking price. And by the way, we never have multiple offers here. I mean, we're selling a lot of real estate, but our prices still have not recovered from 2008. So a lot of my sellers, every one of my sellers last year was taking a 25% hit when they sold their property. But anyway.
What's your average days on market, do you think? Well, I guess it depends on the price.
It's like 400 days or something. But I'll call a seller and say, hey, Jerry, I have an offer in your house. The good news is I have an offer in your house. The bad news is kind of low. Hey, Jerry, I need your authorization to reject the offer. And then what do you say?
Well, what was it?
Right. You know what, Jerry? I'd really rather not tell you it's really low. I just need your authorization to reject the offer. It's not legal for me to do it without your permission. May I please have permission to reject the offer?
No, I want to know what it was.
Jerry, you know what? It's just a low offer. I don't want to make you mad. I need your permission to reject the offer.
I'm not going to let you do that. I want to know what it was. How bad was it? How bad was it?
So now when I tell you, after I've taken it away from you three times, now I'll tell you what the offer was. Well, the offer was $1.2 million. You're going to say, yeah, that is low, but let's see what we can do here. Maybe we can work them up. Whereas if I had just gone to the seller with that $1.2 million offer right out of the gate, they'd be like, who does that person think they are? You just want a quick deal and blah, blah, blah. So when you take it away three times before you actually present the number, then you're demonstrating, you're not manipulating, you're demonstrating your detachment from the outcome, and you're sort of listening to their instructions also. But now when you bring that number in there after the third time they ask for it, they can look at it with fresh eyes that are focused on the offer and not on you just trying to get a quick deal or somebody trying to screw them over.
Exactly. Well, my next question was, how do you display? I think there's often in our industry a strong perception that we are attached to the deal, because I think there's a lot of coaching out there that is driven to the deal and not to the relationship and the best interest of the client.
Right.
So
Right.
it's easy. It's like I think sometimes we may come to clients, or do you find, and with your reputation, probably not, but do you find that some of the agents that you help or workshops that you teach, you have agents that are trying to figure out how to overcome that often built-in assumption about our industry? Did that question make sense?
I think I got it. Again, you need to demonstrate your detachment from the outcome. So sometimes on a negotiation, in fact, this just happened. What day is this? Friday? I think it was Wednesday.
It's Friday. Yeah. Well, no, it's Thursday as far as everybody watching the show is concerned.
I know.
Live on Facebook, but it's Friday. Right.
Okay. But I think it was like 2 days ago.
Yeah.
We're trying to put a sale together. And so I just go to the seller and say, looks like this is not going to come together. We're $67,000 apart at $1.5 million sale, for example. And looks like we're going to lose it over $67,500. And probably not the right buyer. But you know what, Mr. Seller? I don't care if it takes me a year. I'll find someone else who will pay the price you want for your house. And then I'll go to the buyer side or the buyer's agent to say, you know what? Looks like your people can't see the value here. They don't, or they can't afford it or whatever. And, if it takes me a year to find you another house with everything you want, like this one does, for a number you can justify paying, I'm committed to finding it. So now I take it away from both people. Then I just sit back here and maybe take a nap and try to guess which one's going to call first and make another move.
That's great. Yeah.
So take it away from both of them.
That's a great idea, because I think often when we present offers, the seller's under the assumption we're presenting it hoping for them to accept it. So now they feel they've got to battle with us first, and the battle's not with us. We're here for them for whatever they want. We're not attached. We're only attached, or we should only be attached to their goal.
Right. And that's another big mistake that agents make is that how they communicate offers and counter offers. I hear this all the time. I hear them say, well, the seller really wants this. The seller has to have this. The seller needs this.
Yeah.
Well, the buyer can only pay this. The buyer only wants to pay that. And that's like, you just want to go.
You just made them mad. You just made your client mad. Yeah. They can't hear anything when they get mad.
In terms of the market. Always talk in terms of the market. The seller's perception of the market data leads him to this counter offer. The buyer's perception of the recent sales in the neighborhood leads her to this offer she's making. Always blame it on Mr. Market. Never talk about the seller's or the buyer's position, as you mentioned a second ago. Always talk about the market, the disinterested, cold, heartless market.
Well, when I come to my seller telling them what the buyer wants, the seller immediately says, then the buyer is not the buyer. And they also immediately think, then you're not doing your job to help the buyer understand the value of this house and why they should pay it. Isn't that what I hired you for? And now you've become the enemy. You've retargeted their focus to yourself as opposed to the deal.
Yeah, that's like the kiss of death.
And there's, so many agents say, I'm just trying to do what's in their best interest, and they fired me. And
I know. Well, you have to do things like, there's little things you have to do, like you have to sit on the same side of the table with them. If you're sitting at a table in a kitchen or a dining room, you must not sit opposite them when you're presenting an offer. You must sit next to them.
Always sit next to them.
Because the market's on the other side of the table.
Exactly.
We always speak in terms of, okay, so they've come up to this level based on this comp and this comp and this comp. I've given you my CMA when we began our odyssey of selling your house together. What market data would you like me to pull in here to get them up to the number you're talking about? That's a great dialogue when it's overpriced, because a lot of times the market data doesn't exist.
Exactly. So, that's great. All right. So I want to know, Jack, because you have learned people and you have learned how to negotiate quite well over the years. What is one of your best examples of a challenge that kind of taught you a lot of these key factors in understanding this ability to negotiate these big deals?
Really wealthy people need to feel a sense of competition and a sense of urgency. And that manifests itself in, lots of times. But here's a story that sort of illustrates what I'm going to talk about. We went on a listing presentation for a house, and it was, I I think it was like in the sixes somewhere. And we did our whole thing, and the seller's like, great, we want to list with you. We'll list with you. We just want to exclude the next door neighbor because he's always said if this house ever comes on the market, he'd like to buy it. What I said was, well, you know what? We don't do exclusions. We can do one of two things. Number one, you can go to that buyer and sell your house to him directly and cut me out. And if you need some coaching along the way and you have any questions, give me a shout and I'll be happy to help you. Or you can list it with me now and I'll go sell it to that guy and I'll get more than you will, more than enough to pay my fee. In this one particular situation, the seller said, no, I want to try to do it on my own, and I'll call you if it doesn't work out. So being forgetful as I am, it was like 4 or 5 months later, it's totally gone from my mind. The seller calls me back again and he says, I'm ready to list my house. I went to the next door neighbor and the most he would pay is he offered me $4.5 million, wouldn't put up any more. We both know it's worth more. So you can have the listing. So I listed it for $6.5 million. 5 days later, sold it to the next door neighbor for $6.5 million. And I could stand here and say, well, it's because I'm such a great genius and all this stuff. But the real reason is that prior to my listing the property, that next door neighbor didn't have any sense of urgency or sense of competition. Until his family saw me driving in the driveway next door, bringing buyers in, they had the property all to themselves. Sometimes you're sitting at a table now. Mm-hmm. And I'll say to a seller, listen, let's pretend this entire tabletop represents the market for your property. Why would we want to limit the exposure to the area of this one folder? Oh, see that piece of paper on your desk? Why do we want to limit the market to this one piece of paper when there's this whole market out there? Because even if this piece of paper represents the ultimate buyer, the ultimate market for your house, it needs to feel the sense of competition and sense of urgency that comes about from competing with the entire table.
Exactly.
So they need to feel that sense of competition. So we sold it to the next door neighbor for $2 million more, which more than paid our fee. I swear, the same thing happened on the other side of that house. And we had the property listed. The next door neighbor came and looked at it. We hate it, we hate it, we hate it. We don't want it. We have enough property. We're too old. We're too blah, blah, blah. The second we had a buyer, they swooped in and aced them out. Because when they had the house all to themselves, no interest. As soon as they had an inkling that someone else was going to be next door to them, boom, bought it, another $5 million sale.
Exactly. Wow.
They need to feel that sense of competition and urgency that comes about from competition. That's what I call the higher power. You really need to, the highest power you can have in the high end is almost having it like an auction.
Exactly. Well, both of those stories also went back to the 3 rules of negotiating: build,
Right.
standing, never assume, and detach. You were detached when he said he wanted to hire it. This is it. You can go do that. You weren't attached to the listing. You were attached. You were detached from that outcome. You didn't assume
Right.
anything. You didn't assume that he was going to sell it. You didn't assume if you said that he wasn't going to hire you. And you didn't assume his real agenda because you knew the value that you offered. And building standing, just by doing that in your presentation and handling people, that built your standing. So you stood by very strong principles. It's kind of to the kind of ironic metaphor compass, but the compass stayed pointed north in that negotiating, which kept
Right.
all of those 3 things, which brought out an amazing outcome. That's a great example. So I always do final 3. Since you've been on the show, I don't even know if I was doing my final 3. Final 3 is final 3 questions. Don't worry. So
Okay.
the first of the, you're like, final 3. So we've had everybody, Jack was one of our first 3. How many, Isaac?
Yeah, it was our first 3.
You were in our first 3 guests. We have now had
121 interviews.
but when this will be about 130 on
Wow.
episodes, and so that was 130 weeks ago, by the way, because we've had we've skipped 1 week. 1 week we skipped of all 130, so we've been going more. But anyway, my point in all of that is now we always ask the final 3 questions. So on the final 3, the first question would be, what have you found has been your most impactful tool? It could be technology. It can be anything but your cell phone. It doesn't have to be, some people are CRMs, whatever it is other than your cell phone. What do you find is your most powerful tool in being a great real estate agent?
My most powerful tool?
Yes. Or most effective, or whatever the word is, your favorite.
Yeah, well, I would just have to say it's my pricing expertise.
I would say so too. Well, you're 40, how many pages is that? 45? No.
Now they're even thicker. But anyway,
Yeah.
people in the high end want to deal with an expert. They want to deal with a medical expert when they have a sore elbow. They want to deal with a tax expert when they have a tax situation. They want to deal with an accounting expert when they have another problem. So when they have a real estate issue, they want to deal with an expert. And the goal is to become their trusted real estate advisor. And the way you do that is by helping them with their value analysis every single year. Every single person a wealthy person interacts with, whether it's their CPA, their attorney, their banker, their investment advisor, meets with a client once a year to give them an update on their situation. How come we don't do that? So
exactly. That is powerful. That might be one of the best ones on the show.
Right.
Isaac agrees. So go ahead.
So I'm doing one right now for somebody. They need a yearly update. And the two taxes people in the high end are obsessed with are property taxes, of course, but also estate taxes. Mm-hmm. And the way you minimize your estate tax is that you put your property into a trust or an LLC, then you transfer a certain amount of the asset to the beneficiaries, and after a certain amount of time, the property is totally out of your estate and is owned by the beneficiaries, then you rent it back from the trust. Well, to do that, you need a yearly valuation from an expert. It doesn't have to be an appraisal, but when you can bring that kind of value to the wealthy people or to their gatekeepers, like their lawyers, their trust officers, their investment advisors, and CPAs, you're bringing value to their gatekeepers and therefore to them as well. You're making the gatekeepers look like heroes, and you're getting in front of these people. It's long-term, no question. But if I look at my biggest sales, it all came from that.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. That's one of my favorites that you do. It takes a lot of work, but it's like, wait a minute, isn't that what we're here for, to work and bring value?
So much work. I'm getting
so much work.
I'm getting kind of tired. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So the next one is, so first, I wanted you to give us, because I didn't give you enough of a chance to talk about your 3 books. So tell us about your 3 books on real estate and the book on dogs, because that was a lot of fun. But then I would love for you to add to us a book outside of what you've done that's really influenced your business. So that's loaded.
Okay. Yeah. You would think I'd have a book handy that I could hold up, but I don't. I have 3 books.
We're going to have links and everything for everybody. So
Selling Luxury Homes is a book, A to Z, becoming the trusted advisor for the wealthy people in your marketplace. Then I have a book for consumers, 2 books for consumers. One's called 12 Secrets Luxury Home Buyers Know That You Can Use. So what are 12 things I've learned from rich people that can help you be a smarter buyer? And then what are 12 things I've learned from rich people that can help you be a smarter seller? So those are really 2 consumer books. And then the dog book is just what my dog died. I was writing something for my kids to remember the dog by, and then a publisher happened to see it and published it. And that's just a fun book. What's really fun, Jere, is that I've gotten 5 or 10 times more real estate business from my dog book than all of my real estate books combined.
because it's personal.
It's amazing to me. Because I
That's
thought,
awesome.
my real estate book was going to be like this golden business card, and people do like it. But the dog book has got me more come list me calls than anything.
And what is it? What inspired you to do the dog book?
My dog died, and I wanted to have something for my kids to remember the dog by, so I wrote a book of lessons from the dog for my kids. And my agents,
so awesome, yeah.
we printed it and bound it in the office because we have a binding thing for listing presentations. And then my agents got a copy. They went to Kinko's and made like 25 copies for Christmas and gave them to me. So I was giving them out. And somebody gave one to one lady who was a professor, I think in Connecticut. And she'd written some textbooks and she gave it to her publisher. And they actually called me up and said, "We want to publish your book." I'm like, "You're kidding." I thought it was a joke. And anyway.
That's the best. That's the best. So we're going to give everybody links to all of these books. I'm dying to know, because I know so much about your Selling Luxury Homes book, because I'm the audience, the agent for that book.
Yeah.
I want to, and everybody, we've really talked a lot about, you go into great detail, much more than we've talked about today, so I really recommend this to everyone.